So I wanted to touch on this because the new hotfix that they talked about the other day has been implemented. I was going to make a video on this, but they had this basically say that the hotfix hadn't been deployed, and by the time I had went to bed, it still wasn't deployed. So I waited on the video, but it is live in the game now. Now I want to talk about this, and I want to talk about a big con to this that applies to a lot of you more casual players out there, or people that just aren't interested in pushing as high. But as for what this actually does, it basically just, as they mention, comparatively makes us equivalently as strong as we were before to the tiers that we are trying to push. Meaning that, as they say here, the new top range for tier 100 will feel like what tier 70 was previously. Obviously, feel like is probably the wrong words here. It's going to feel like tier 100 because we are weaker. But essentially, tier 70, the stats associated with it last season are basically what tier 100 will be now. So as you can see here, the HP reduced at tier 100 is reduced by 82%, and the damage that we take, or the damage that they're dealing rather, is reduced by 79%. And that might seem like a lot, but they also mentioned here that their level is still going to be significantly higher than players in higher Nightmare Dungeon tiers, which means that all the differential scalings and things are still happening, which means once again we go back to it'll feel like tier 70. Well, it'll feel like tier 100, but it will actually kind of play like tier 70. Now, this is all good, but I want to talk about the break point, meaning that at what point do we feel like the tier that we're fighting matches our progression level? And that actually starts at around like tier 40, 45, or 50. Around that. I'm giving a range because it really depends on what build, and all that type of stuff. But you'll notice here at tier 50, the HP reduced by 20%, and the damage that they're dealing is reduced by 13%. However, at tier 35, it's reduced by 2 and 1% respectively, which means that from 1 to 35, there's basically zero change, right? The difference between 100% HP and 98% HP is not even close to the nerfs that we got to our characters and our builds, right? You have to remember here, if I pull open the game, the crossbow is a perfect example of this because it's a core to the Twisting Blades build that I'm running right now. And you'll notice that it's got 9% vulnerable damage. Previously, that would have been, it got nerfed by 65%. So it would have been roughly around 30% or so, which is a massive, massive difference. That is a huge damage decrease. And that's just the inherent stat on the crossbow. Crit damage has been nerfed across the board, right? Like critical strike damage inherent stat, your cooldown reductions, your basically everything that was core to our builds before has been nerfed, as we mentioned, and also our survivability has been nerfed. So reducing their damage that they're dealing by 1% does not match the loss in survivability that we have. And so at around tier 40, 45, or 50, as I mentioned, I think it's closer to 50, we're actually going to feel like we're as strong as we were before, and we're able to do tier 50 about the same time that we were in the preseason, because the Nightmare Dungeons actually had been nerfed to our level, which we had been nerfed to. I will note that we do get some powerful bonuses with the new hearts, and so those do increase our power level quite a bit. But as I mentioned before, the power level increases that we got from the hearts, in conjunction with the nerfs to our builds and the nerfs to our stats, kind of even out at around tier 40 to 50. So what that means is casual players don't really feel this buff all that much, because most casual players actually aren't even going to interact with this content. But if you're perhaps an Eternal Realm character, it's going to hit you even harder because you're not going to have access to the hearts, right? And if you're not and you're playing a season, well, if you're maybe a semi-casual, less hardcore, then you're probably only going to reach to tier 50 at the end, perhaps, of like a month or two of playing the game. Which means that first month or two is still going to feel way worse because you're going to be fighting in those lower tiers, which just are basically harder for you now than it was comparatively in the previous season. Which is a little bit interesting, and, well, I'm not sure if it's a good thing. This is just kind of how it ends up being. You can let me know in the comment section whether or not you like this or dislike this. I'm not actually sure. What I will say is, for someone like me and for more semi-casual / more hardcore players, well, as you approach those higher tiers, it'll feel, well, like it was last season. So, no difference really from the nerfs, which is, I think, a good thing overall. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all the next one.